Welcome back to Deadscape Diaries. Some places on the coast aren't meant for the living. The fog hangs heavy, the air tastes of salt and rot, and the wind carries whispers that aren't your own. Tonight, we're going to Devil's Rest, a town that looks ordinary in daylight, but when darkness falls, it remembers what was lost and hungers for what it can't bury. There's a feast there every Halloween. The townsfolk say it honors the dead, but some meals come at a price far higher than the living can pay. This is the feast at Devil's Rest. The fog never really left Devil's Rest. Even in daylight, the air hung thick, gray, and wet, the kind that clung to your skin like breath. Folk said the area there wasn't made of water, but memory. Everything it touched, it kept. Caleb Mercer hadn't been home in 10 years, not since the hurricane took his father, and the town buried half its people in a single week. He'd built a lifestyle elsewhere, one with light, noise, and cell service. But when the letter came, written in a trembling hand and sealed with a wax cross, something in him couldn't resist. The letter said, "Come home for the remembrance supper. The feast is for the living and the lost alike." The handwriting was his grandmother's, but she'd been dead for years. He drove down the old coast road, past drowned fields and churches half swallowed by mud. The signs were gone, but he knew when he'd crossed into Devil's Rest. The trees grew too close together, and every so often he'd catch shapes in the fog that looked like faces turning towards him. By dusk, he reached the town square, or what was left of it. The statue of St. Ariella leaned sideways, barnacled and broken. Around it, lanterns burned low, lighting rows of tables covered in old linen and steaming bowls of dark, rich stew. There were people everywhere, laughing, singing, raising cups, but something about the way they moved was wrong. Too calm, too synchronized. An old woman waved from the head of the table. "Caleb Mercer," she called, her voice like gravel and honey. "You came home just in time. The feast waits for no one." Her face was familiar, but not right. The same eyes as his grandmother, but deeper, too dark. Caleb hesitated, the smell of stew thick and sweet in his nose. He hadn't eaten all day. The woman smiled, wider. "Eat, child. Tonight, we feed the living and the faithful dead." Caleb sat among the townsfolk, steam from the stew fogging his glasses. The bowl in front of him was filled to the brim, thick red-brown broth with tender chunks of meat that looked almost too perfect. A slice of cornbread floated on top, soaking through, and the smell made his stomach growl despite the unease coiling in his chest. Across the table, a man with a preacher's collar lifted his cup. "To the blessed, to the ones who stayed and the ones who returned." Everyone echoed it, "To the blessed," and drank deep. Caleb took a small sip, and the taste hit him like memory, rich, savory, and faintly metallic. The broth left a warm trail down his throat, but the aftertaste sat heavy, like old blood. He set the spoon down. "What's in this?" he asked quietly. The woman beside him, her face half hidden by a black veil, smiled without looking up. "Just what the sea gives back to us." Her hands trembled as she ate, or maybe they shivered. Her skin looked loose, like it didn't quite belong to her. The preacher's voice boomed again. "The remembrance binds us all. Each year we eat to honor those who passed into the tide, so that they may walk among us once more." The crowd cheered. Some cried, others simply kept eating, their movements mechanical, rhythmic. Caleb noticed something in the lantern light, faint smears of reddish brown on the tablecloth, like fingerprints that had soaked through. The stew pot in the center of the table was massive, cast iron, blackened with years of use. Steam rose thick and steady, and when someone stirred it, something shifted beneath the surface. A bone. Not small. Not animal. Caleb stood up fast, the bench scraping. What the hell is this? The woman in the veil looked up. Her eyes caught the light, pale and glassy, like she hadn't blinked in a long time. Sit, child. The feast ain't over yet. The living must eat, or the dead go hungry. Her lips peeled back into a grin, and for the first time, Caleb saw the stitching, a faint black thread running along the edge of her jaw. He backed away from the table as the preacher began to hum a hymn, the rest of the crowd joining in. The song was old, cracked, and off-key, but it carried sharply through the fog. And then, the first lantern went out. One by one, the lights dimmed until only the glow from the pot remained, red and pulsing, like a heartbeat. The last lantern went out, and for a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the ocean, slow, steady, and much too close. Then the hymn started again, deeper this time, rolling through the fog like a tide. The preacher's voice was a rasping growl now, more beast than man. Caleb backed towards his car, but the fog swallowed everything beyond the square. He could hear the sea, though closer than it should have been. And beneath the hymn, another sound, bubbling, wet, hungry. The preacher raised his hands high, sleeves soaked with something dark. The tide returns what the living owe, he cried. Tonight, the blood of the wanderer will keep our dead at rest. The crowd parted, and Caleb realized they weren't looking for him. They were turning toward him, their movements stiff and puppet-like, faces pale, eyes hollow, flesh stitched and sagging. "Stay away from me," he shouted, fumbling for his keys. But there was no car. The space where he'd parked was empty, the ground wet and glistening like black grass. He turned and saw the pot again, only now it wasn't on the table. It was sinking into the earth, the ground around it bubbling as something massive moved beneath the surface. The smell of salt and decay filled the air. The preacher stepped forward, holding a ladle slick with crimson. "Eat, Caleb," he said softly. "Your blood brought you home. Your blood will feed the rest." He flung the ladle's contents across Caleb's face. It was warm, metallic, thick. The crowd fell silent. Then the ground split open with a sound like tearing flesh. From beneath the square, a shape rose, vast, dripping, human and not. Dozens of hands reached out from it, pale and writhing, pulling at the stone, at the air, at him. Faces pressed and slid beneath the translucent skin. Faces he recognized. His father, his grandmother, everyone the town had ever buried. The preacher smiled, teeth sharp in the dark. "Welcome home, son of Devil's Rest." Caleb screamed as the ground opened, swallowing him whole. The fog folded inward, and the town went still once more. By dawn, the tables were empty. The pot was gone. Only the ocean remained, calm, glassy, and red where it touched the shore. When the next traveler arrived, a letter waited for them at the edge of town, sealed with a wax cross. "Come home for the remembrance supper. The feast is for the living and the lost alike." And that was the feast at Devil's Rest. Some towns aren't meant to be visited after dark. The fog will swallow you. The sea will remember you. And the dead, they'll never let you leave. If you ever find yourself on a coastal road with lanterns flickering in the mist and a letter waiting at your doorstep, remember, the feast is for both the living and the lost alike. Thank you for listening to Deadscape Diaries. If you enjoyed tonight's story, leave a like, share it, and tell me what kind of horror you want next. Until next time, keep your lanterns close and your eyes on what lies beneath the fog.